Things rarely go to plan, especially in my life, because my story, well, that was crafted from chaos. I would think, I just can't keep going, feel crushed under the weight of life. There weren't big headlines, but there were small heartbeats in a career that just seemed dead. Because somewhere between the pauses and the pain, this space opened up, not as a brand idea, but as a lifeline. That's when I learned pain wasn't my enemy. It was my teacher. And instead of wrestling with that, I began to eventually welcome it as a gentle invitation. Hi, I'm Joti Patel, and this is episode 1 of my brand new podcast, LemonAid, a soulful space for life's messy middle, somewhere to press into pain and pour out purpose. Together, we'll squeeze out life's lemons and make something sweet. Now, I'm a woman who wears many hats. I'm an actress, a creative, and a coach. But ultimately, I make meaning from messy moments. And in a world that moves fast and feels uncertain, things rarely go to plan, especially in my life. So I hope this becomes an anchor, a reminder of something timeless, which is our shared struggles and the quiet healing that happens through human connection, through stories that travel beyond borders and boundaries and beliefs. This is a gentle tonic for weary hearts and a soft landing for the in-between. If you're stuck in a season and you're not sure which way to go, just know that you're not broken. You're just blooming. And you're not alone. Let me take you back to where it started for me. Because my story, well, that was crafted from chaos, with several cracks where light seeped in, shaping tender truths that form the content for today's episode. So let's call it a LemonAid love letter. From me to you. I want to start just a little closer to the heart, because this part of the pour is what I call the lemon drop, just a small solo reflection before the main story unfolds, because life rarely moves in straight lines. It twists, it pauses, it squeezes, and sometimes we're not even sure which chapter we're in. So that's where this story begins, somewhere between the chaos and the calm, and between what was and what's still actually forming. So it's not polished or perfect wisdom, just pages that are still being written and lessons gathered from detours and delays. Honestly, I never thought that my lemons would make a podcast. I just wanted to know how to keep juggling them so that I could survive the squeeze of life. And eventually, I'd say that life had other plans and it brought me to my knees. And from going at 100 miles an hour, I had to go into complete stillness. And that's when I learned pain wasn't my enemy. It was my teacher. And instead of wrestling with that, I began to eventually welcome it as a gentle invitation to stretch beyond my comfort and step into change. Even when it hurt, pain became a force that propelled me into a season of healing and renewal and realignment. I'm still learning how to process, and what I'm realizing is that it's under pressure that refinement can happen. So today I'm sharing a segment from my story and something that helps you understand how I began to create this space, a sanctuary for storytelling and soul care. All right, here we go. Once upon a time, I was born in Britain with Indian roots and a little Trinidadian spice, with a longing that never quite fit inside neat boxes. Mine's always been this masala mix, a blend of cultures and countries and contradictions, shaped by families who left everything they knew to start all over again. And like many children of immigrants, I grew up in a space somewhere between gratitude, but also longing. I was thankful for the sacrifices that gave me stability, but I longed for a freedom that didn't always fit the ideals of success. The world I grew up in, it was about security, but my inner world, well, that was about stories and creativity and expression. But there was no roadmap for the kind of life that I dreamed of. No one in my family that I could point to and say, hey, look, she did it. Maybe I can too. So I learned early on to play both parts. A dutiful daughter on the outside and a dreamer tucked quietly on the inside. For years, it felt like I was threading myself between a mirage of things, this tapestry that could sometimes look beautiful between the threads, but at other times it was unraveling under the weight of expectation that was heavy, followed by an ache of what if that was even heavier. Eventually, the gap became so wide that I needed to know who I was and who I longed to be. So I spread my wings. I moved to London. I got a place at drama school. No blueprint, no safety net. No, just a passion and a fire knowing that I had to at least try. And London was exhilarating and exhausting. I spent days working and nights at drama class and weekends auditioning or studying, and then I got a little breakthrough. My first play, Romeo and Juliet, but not as Juliet, as her mother, Lady Capulet. Art mirrored my life, and I finally saw that my own story was reflecting back to me. Every night went between duty and desire. And by 2017, my life looked more polished. I had a career in coaching, I had some respectable TV credits, a lovely home. But underneath it all, there was just a nudging that made me feel there was more, and not more things, but more meaning. A fuel that saw me unpack London and move my bags to New York, chasing a bigger sky, a declaration that my dreams were worth believing in, even if I had to believe alone. But the year that I arrived, life shifted overnight. Very quickly, my grandfather, who was well when I said goodbye, passed away. It was the night of Diwali, a festival of light that was shadowed by loss. And that moment marked the beginning of a whole cascade of bereavement that took place. A season where goodbyes just seemed to keep coming every time I had a glimmer of hope on this side. Grief found me before I'd even unpacked my bags, and then came 2020. COVID, lockdowns, limbo, not just for me, but for everybody. And I drifted between New Jersey and New York and Las Vegas and the UK, caught between different worlds again, different time zones and identities, experiences of what that looked like. Not really rooted anywhere, but trying to build a life around the motion and the stillness that felt like it felt jarring, but it was also a gift. And then my neighborhood shifted too. The place I decided to put my roots down in the US, it reshaped itself, and in less than 2 years, the rent nearly doubled. A reminder that even resilience has a cost. So I juggled so many things, virtual auditions, coaching across time zones, working through the night, going into day jobs, just trying to stay afloat. And there were nights that I questioned everything, because the cost of belonging, that cost of dreaming, of trying to build a home and a life, it just felt like a concept I couldn't locate. And yet somehow grace met me through very unexpected ways. A stranger's kindness, something left on the doorstep, tenderness in the middle of pain and heartache. And just as the world reopened, new disruptions came. The strikes hit the industry that I was working in. Hollywood came to a halt. Creative projects that I'd been building, I had to sidestep so that I could move my life forward and stay functional, keep the dream alive, but get the rent paid. And then, as if life wanted to test me again, I had a ski accident and got left with a shattered knee and a long recovery with some surgery and stillness. And then came surrender in the middle of a stint in New York and the hustle that came with being in the business world. I then tried to recalibrate, and again, life just did its own thing. And somehow the internal chaos that I felt was all around me. And eventually I just didn't know which way to go until I had no choice but to just let it be. The mismatch of trying to build a life but yet being so alone, wanting connection with depth and not performance, trying to date in a world that was so disposable. I couldn't find my footing. And so when LemonAid came, it came because I needed to build a sanctuary, not just for me, but for other people that I saw struggling through scarcity and fear and concerns about how to pay the bills, how to stay healthy, how to move through life in such a strange set of circumstances. And slowly, my light began to return. Over time, I can look back and see that credits started to come onto my CV for the acting world. And, there weren't big headlines, but there were small heartbeats in a career that just seemed dead. And then I learnt how to put roots into foundations that could hold me up in a way that gave me more resilience so that I could thrive without feeling the need to have perfection and rather focus on connection. Because somewhere between the pauses and the pain, this space opened up, not as a brand idea, but as a lifeline, as a way to navigate the long nights where I was questioning why things were happening the way they were. How can I press into these lemons and create something sweet from grief and duty and misunderstandings and loneliness and rejection and heartache? How can I find ways to strengthen but also serve? Because my squeeze isn't the end of the story. It's the start of the pour. And looking back now, I see things differently. The detours and the heartbreaks and the limbo seasons, they weren't failures. They were really invitations to slow down, to listen, and to find meaning woven into the mess. I know what it's like to hold it together on the outside while quietly falling apart within. So that's the story, or at least a slice of my life, in how the lemons landed me here, having a conversation about an important chapter of moments that really tested me and also transformed. After every story, we'll enter into the squeeze, a space where we pause and press a little deeper to explore the journey from sour to sweet, to distill the essence and give you a tender takeaway to carry into your life. Here's what rose to the top for me. Every time I would think, I just can't keep going, feel crushed under the weight of life, somehow I would find myself on the other side, because resilience was never built in spite of pressure. It was born because of it. And I've learned that detours often lead us right where we need to be. That pain, though it does feel heavy, eventually it can soften. And that healing, it doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just bubbles very slowly under the surface. So I want you to remember the squeeze isn't here to diminish you. It's refining you, distilling everything from a raw and real kind of place into a wisdom that can turn into transformation. It may not look like triumph, but it can feel like tenderness. And that's where light can start pouring through the cracks and everything changes. And that brings us to the next part of the show, our coaching corner, Sip and Pour. It's where we take what we've just pressed and pour it gently into your lives, because we're living through some very testing times. People are stretched emotionally, spiritually, practically and financially. The world is ever shifting. So let me introduce you to a term called VUCA. It was coined in the 1980s by military leaders, and it was used to describe landscapes that were no longer defined by clear enemies or predictable strategies, but rather by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Sound familiar? It was later then adopted by the business world, and it featured at Ivy League colleges such as Yale and Harvard, and it was used to frame modern organizational challenges and adaptive leadership. But I've come to think that VUCA isn't just out there. It's also in here, inside us, as inner turbulence when life just stops making sense. So what if we learned how to flip that and let it teach us? When things are volatile, we can ask, what helps me feel steady? What rhythms or rituals make me feel safe? That could be something simple, like just prayer or journaling. When life feels uncertain, we can ask, what's true? What are my values? What are my anchors? When things feel complex, how can you cut through the noise and simplify to get to the main message? And what's the next right step, not all the steps? And when things feel ambiguous, you can just ask, can I trust what I don't see yet? Just small ways that you can find calm in the chaos and compassion in the squeeze. So now that we've unpacked what VUCA actually means, let's pour a new perspective and look at it through a different lens. I'm going to invite you to sit with the uncertainty, and we're going to find ways to embrace it, because the only thing we can ever truly count on is that life will feel uncertain. So instead of being afraid of that, what happens if we lean into it? Uncertainty, it doesn't always have to mean danger. Sometimes it's just a quiet place where surprises are born. So I'd like you to think back. In fact, get a pen and paper first, draw 2 columns, and on the left, think back to all the times where you felt overwhelmed with a situation. Could be a health diagnosis or losing a job or anything like that. And then in the next column, write down what the outcome of that situation was. Because often we treat uncertainty like it's the enemy. But when you've lived through it and you look back, then you can start seeing the beauty in life taking you down a different path, a path you might not have even seen coming. Remember, you are more capable than you realize. And even when it feels like you're stuck in a fog, just remember that you'll get through that too. You'll look back and you'll be like, I made it. I can add it to the list. Now, as an actress, I appreciate a good script. And, well, really, who needs a predictable storyline? We all know that it's in the plot twists where the magic starts to happen, right? So, as somebody watching a film, I'm sure you'd like to be kept on the edge of your seat and be surprised at where the story goes. You're invested in the character's outcome, and yet you don't know how they're going to get where they're going. But it's this uncertainty that leads to excitement, and somehow we call this entertainment. So if we knew everything about the movie ahead of time, or knew everything about our own life's journey, well, where's the fun in that? It's not always about having the answers, but really just feeling steady in the not knowing. There's a peace that can exist even before anything feels resolved. A calm in the middle of chaos, that's something I have definitely felt on more than one occasion. It's a sense that you don't have to engineer every outcome, and that life can still unfold when you just learn how to maybe not grip so tightly. We often think that the outcome is that we know what's best for us, but actually sometimes life can have something better waiting ahead. So yeah, try to reframe uncertainty as your friend, as an invitation. And the next time you're met with fear in the unknown, switch to surrender. Let life surprise you, and let's see how it feels to live life with just a little bit more zest. I would love for you to reflect on this and just really consider what lemons you're holding on to right now. What are they trying to teach you? Because growth is fairly glamorous. It can be quiet, unseen, but something's happening. And maybe through that squeeze, perhaps you're being prepared for something even better. As you can see, LemonAid was born from a quiet wrestle. It's not the kind that you always read about on social media, but I used to think Arrival was a destination, a big aha moment where it would all make sense. Now I think of Arrival as more than a single door. It's a practice of putting your hand on the handle again and again and again, even when you just feel like you've got nothing left to give, because that's how things are born, through the cracks. This podcast was born from that space between heartbreak and hope, between endings and beginnings. It's my way of turning silence into something that can speak, because for too long, I thought pain was something that I needed to avoid or escape. But now I see that it actually can be an instrument to transformation. There's a poet that I love called Rumi. He's a 13th century Persian poet, and he said the wound is the place where the light enters you. And that truth is something that shapes everything about this space, because it's not just my story, it's all of ours. A shared table for all of us to learn how to live and to love and to heal and to just keep showing up. So wherever you are, whatever your squeeze, take heart. You're not broken. You're just becoming. Thank you so much for joining me on this very first episode of LemonAid. And if this story resonated with you, if it stirred something that you can share, please do pour it forward. I would love you to like, subscribe, share the episode with somebody who might need more light in their life, because the more people that find this, the more we can keep coming together So join me on Instagram at joti.lemonade or sign up for the LemonAid newsletter at jotilemonade.com or through the link tree, because this space was never meant to be a monologue. It's a community, and you're all welcome here. Until next time, press pause, reset, and replay. I'll join you in the next episode. See you soon. Sometimes even after the squeeze, we think we've landed and life just keeps rerouting us. The plans we make, the paths we trust, they just keep moving. So maybe those detours aren't mistakes, but rather rediscoveries for a new destination. Taking new directions is what we're talking about in episode 2. We'll be looking at what can feel like delay and dead ends. And actually, it's just your sat-nav story. It's your unique ride in this world. So even if it feels off course, just remember it can still be on purpose. See you then.